Last week, we welcomed Christine Shepard from the American Bird Conservancy and Dan Paizelli with FX Collaborative in New York. He's an architect who's also working on sustainability issues, but is also with a firm that is taking the lead in doing bird-safe glass throughout New York City. And so that talk is actually available on our YouTube channel. And this talk today will also be available on that channel. And like I said earlier, this is just the beginning of continued programming. And now that we're feeling more comfortable actually gathering in site and potentially at Gilsland Farm and doing a walk and talk and maybe even a charrette, and also just, maybe even doing a drink and crit to just start asking people about, what are they thinking of? And where are they going? So I'm going to keep admitting folks in. So today I'm really excited actually to just have a conversation with our local brilliant design talent. We can talk to people from away, but it's really important to hear from people here. Danielle Foisy with Kaplan Thompson Architects is on our board, and she has a brilliant intro on how she got involved with this. So I'm pretty excited for that. And then Matt Maiello and Austin Smith with Simon's Architects. Austin, I have been involved in conversations about this. Austin's on the planning board for the city of Portland, but also is a birder. So it's really brilliant to have that perspective as well. They are peers. They are literally working in situ in the environment of Maine. So their context is really important. And then also we have Nick Lund from Maine Audubon, who again is our partner. And as we develop programs, we'll always have Nick around, we can look at it from the design and product perspective, but then there's also policy and also the ornithology as well. Before Nick speaks, I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to thank all of our programs in 2021 have been free, have been digital, have been online. As we go forward into the rest of the year and we do more in-person programming, they will also be free. And without our benefactors, our underwriters, and our sponsors on the next slide, we wouldn't be able to do this. I also want to give a shout out to Glass Pro, who just came on after our last talk on BirdSafe. They are a supplier of glass out on the West Coast, kind of the equivalent of Sigco and Walker on the East Coast and in Quebec. So we're very excited to welcome them and to welcome them into the conversation, because this is really a trifold of designers, window makers, and suppliers. So this is really exciting. Something I very rarely do is, and I'm sorry, I'm punny, but I'm cross-pollinating on programs here. Because we're so close. And tomorrow, if you are in the Portland region, we are having a summer kickoff bash. It's really just to have fun, just to enjoy one another's company, and really no programming except just to have a good time. So that's tomorrow from 4 to 8, and I'd be remiss if I did not advertise that. So we can end that slide presentation. And we can now go to the best view for this will actually be speaker. If you go to your top right-hand corner and you do the speaker view, we are going to welcome Danielle Foisy first, and then Austin and Matt will speak second. They'll present an overview of their projects, introduce how they got involved in this, and then the conversation is really, the beautiful part of this is the conversation after. I see a number of designers on here. We have actually, I say this often, we have a lot of people that signed up for this. There were 34 people actually, as I last checked. Many of you will watch this later. So the opportunity for conversation is missing, but I hope with the folks that are on this, it will be robust. But this will be available by the end of the day on our YouTube channel, and I'll put the link in the chat. Like I said, Danielle is with an architect with Kaplan Thompson, and on the PSA board, sorry, Nick, I'm sorry. I'm going to give you a moment.
Do you mind if I jump in first?
Of course, thank you.
Sorry, Danielle, to cut you off there.
I did invite you to speak.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to Addie and PSA. They've been great partners for this event. Thanks to Austin, of course, who has been with us since the beginning and has walk some early morning streets, which is a tough sell, but he's been great. I also wanted to thank, I see Dr. Chris Marr on the line here with the University of Southern Maine. She and some of her volunteer students have been great partners in the part of this project that involves monitoring bird collisions in Portland, and we thank her and her students. I just want to do a quick little table setting here for folks that may be new to this issue. Last week when we had Dr. Christine Shepard, she's the absolute expert in the country, and so I was going to let her. But as this moment for us right now is about recognizing our impact on the planet, right, in a lot of different ways. The plastic bag ban, I believe, is going into effect tomorrow. We are at this point where humans are really understanding all the different ways that we are impacting the earth and its wildlife, often for the worse, and are working on making things right. Birds hitting buildings is a major impact that until recently remains understudied and not well known, but is a major impact. Scientists estimate that about 1 billion birds per year in the United States die from hitting windows. That's about 1 million birds per day. Well, on the low end estimate, 365 million. That's about 1 million birds per day. That's a lot of birds that are flying into windows. What's going on here is that birds don't know what windows are. Windows reflect back off the environment. They look like a place to perch or a sky to fly through, but they're not. Light also plays a role where illuminated lights or illuminated windows from within become invisible or attract insects, which may attract birds. And this is a major impact. And so I'm really excited to be part of this project with PSA and working with these great architects who are really in the thick of this emerging science of how do we make great buildings while still protecting birds and other wildlife in every other way. So thanks everyone for joining, and I'll let Danielle go ahead now.
And before Danielle does go, I'd also like to give some cushion and space to say that I have said over and over again, I am definitely not an expert, and PSA is really just serving as a conduit to provide as much information. And while we wouldn't say that this is new technology, it is actually still fairly new for many folks in Northern New England dealing with this. So we're excited to provide as much information and as many perspectives as possible. So without further ado, I would like to really welcome the folks that are working on this now in the thick of it. So Danielle, thank you.
Thanks, Abby. So hi everyone, I'm Danielle with Kaplan Thompson Architects and also on the PSA board, as Addie mentioned. I'm by no means an expert in bird safe building, but I'm trying to learn. And so this is just kind of an anecdotal experience I've had in trying to implement some bird safe measures into a building that was already really far along in the design process. And part of the reason I was so inspired to kind of look at some of these measures we could do to prevent bird collisions started with the Complete City Design Competition. So Addie mentions that we had a design competition celebrating Portland, Maine, and we asked participants to visualize what can Portland look like and how can it grow and prosper and what are some visionary ideas for Portland. And one of the competition winners was called Forest City of Birds and Birdsong, and it was all about birdsong makes humans happy, so why not build our city so that birds and humans are both happy living here? And it highlighted that windows are a big issue for bird deaths. And then it also had this amazing map of all the different sites and types of birds that you can see throughout Portland. And I was just I knew there were birds, but I was just completely unaware of the breadth of diversity that exists here. So I'd encourage everyone, if they want to view the full submission, it can be seen at thecompletecity.com. But from this, it led to this really amazing collaboration with the Maine Audubon, where I went to a lecture at Mecca. I think it was Nick that was actually presenting at it. And it was basically, I went into it kind of thinking like, oh, I don't design skyscrapers. This isn't really going to apply to me. But I learned that was not the case, and doing a lot of residential and multifamily projects that are lower rise, it's actually right in that sweet spot of where birds are more likely to hit. And I just remember seeing some sort of image of like a sweet little songbird after colliding with a window. And in the back of my mind, I couldn't get this project out of my head that I was working on that had so many windows. And I'd also was learning that it's mostly songbirds that are more likely to hit windows because of their eye placements at the side of their heads, and more predatory birds, such as hawks that have their eyes facing forward, are less likely to collide into windows. And so I was working on this major renovation project on the coast of Maine and a migration path for birds. And because of the location of it, the design priority was views.
Danielle,
and
I'm
so,
sorry. Danielle, the slides aren't advancing. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry about that. Just
no worries. Are they advancing now?
yes.
Okay.
Great. Okay, great.
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. So this is the competition winner that you can view at thecompletecity.com. This was the picture of the sad bird that made me panic about a project I had late in the design process. And then this is the major renovation site for the project I was working on. And because these were the ocean, like spectacular views, just big windows and ample views were one of the #1 priorities for the design. And so that led to ample windows across the entire ocean side of the elevation. And it just kind of, in my back of my mind during that presentation, I was like, what have we done? Have we made this death trap for birds? And in particular, at that presentation, I learned that corner windows are more susceptible to being hit, and basically anywhere that a bird can see through and vegetation beyond. So in this case, pretty much every window was a corner window. And we were super far into the design process at this point. So then came back to the office, was like, okay, how can we remedy at least some of these potential collisions when we're this far into the design process already? So early on in the schematic design process of the project, we went through with the client and had a list of sustainability goals, but unfortunately bird safety, it wasn't even on our radar to be aware of. And so we had all these great things going for it, like net zero, all electric building, native plantings and green roofs, which made me panic even more because I was like, are we inviting birds to a site that is gonna just like destroy them? Local FSC certified lumber, and then battery backup for resilience. And so the first step was to look at the building design and say, okay, what windows are most at risk? And because knowing the client wouldn't want to sacrifice the view, we kind of knew we were limited to a more UV bird safe glass option, which has an expense to it. So we didn't just want to put it everywhere, especially not knowing or having ever used the product before. And so we went through and we highlighted all the corner windows, and anywhere you could see like, okay, maybe here you could see vegetation beyond, especially the corner window above a green roof seemed like a recipe for collisions. And then large picture windows and no exterior screens. So I've heard that if you have exterior screens, it can kind of help with the birds to like bounce off a little bit, but we have all casements which have interior screens, which unfortunately don't help. And then anywhere that you can kind of see through. So early on in the design, one of the big design intents was for this like glassy corridor moment. And it sounds really cool, but unfortunately it seemed like a hot spot for collisions. And then we were already in talks with our window supplier, Marvin, to determine what could work. So we basically went through our window schedule, highlighted, okay, which windows we identified are most at risk. We had to figure out how it affected the warranty. So it was a little bit unclear at one point of if it have any repercussions. We had a conversation with the client about additional cost, and although it was fairly significant, we kind of just proposed it and let them do with the information what they did. And luckily they were on board, and actually referenced in the existing house, they were having problems with bird collisions. So it seemed like a smart thing for them to do. And we learned it only fixed windows could be implemented with the UV bird safe glass. So all of the casements we'd identified, unfortunately, couldn't be made with bird safe glass. We did switch a couple casement windows to be fixed in this case. And then we were concerned, so this was the final windows that actually did get the UV bird safe glass upgrade. And the windows underneath the large deck and balcony, we were less concerned about for collisions, which I'm hoping is accurate. And then we were also concerned about, like, okay, what does this look like? So we got a little sample of glass shipped from us to us with a flashlight for UV, and lo and behold, it didn't look like anything besides a piece of glass, which was good. And then the last thing was the implications on the energy model. So we do energy models for all of our projects, and a big part of that is the quality of the glass and what is the U value of it. And we'd run all of our calculations with our standard high performance triple glazed window. And this is pre bird safe glass. And one of the things we were finding is that we were getting a huge amount of solar heat gain just because of our big south facing ocean view windows. So because of that, we have exterior solar shades on some of the more susceptible windows to solar heat gain. And we actually learned that the bird safe glazing has a reduced solar heat gain potential, which in our case worked to our benefit because we were already kind of overheating. So anything we could do to lessen that worked in our favor. So that was kind of just an unexpected advantage that we saw by implementing the bird safe glazing. And so this is how it looks like on site. This was taken about a week ago. So it's bird safe glass at the corners, and then you can see the indent of where the big exterior roller shades will go, which will hopefully also be another means to kind of prevent collisions. So when people aren't there, they can take the shades down and there just won't be any glass. And then this is a view from the inside. So pretty much just looks like a corner window, but this is an area that we were pretty concerned about because there's green roof beyond that you can see a little bit of. Again, from the lower level, just looks like a window. And then this is in the bathroom. We use satin edge glazing, which was more for privacy and not bird safety. But through the research, I learned that this does help prevent bird collisions. So it just is an unexpected added benefit. And then the last thing we looked at was bird safety at night. So we wanted to have as minimal lighting impact as possible. So throughout the site, we only have lighting for safety and security, and only with fully shaded fixtures. And then with the interior lighting, we tried to minimize perimeter lighting in the rooms so we only have centered pendants and task lighting as needed. And then it's more in the occupant, but just letting the owner know, like, hey, at night, if you pull the shades down, it could help prevent some nighttime collisions. And then this is how it looks today. There's that big expanse of bird safe glass that's going in soon, but again, we're still learning. Hopefully with our newfound information, we can start implementing bird safe measures earlier on in the design process, but this is just our one experience of just kind of trying to retrofit an existing design with some bird safe measures. And luckily the clients were super on board for it. Yeah.
Great, that was amazing, Danielle, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing the project tracked, actually, so that's great. So next up is Austin, and I've noticed Barbara put in a question on the side panel. You can put questions on the chat, but we'll also open this up to questions after. So we won't answer that now, but Austin, you can take it away, and thank you.
Sure, thanks, Addie. And Danielle, thank you very much. That was fascinating. It was nice to see your work. I wish we had had the opportunity to sort of discuss this during each of our projects. But I'm going to give a little background to the project that Matt has designed, specifically how it sort of came about. And Addie made reference to the fact that I'm a birder myself. In 2016, I went on a Birds on Tap trip, which is a combination birding and brewery visiting. And quite frankly, I was more interested in the beer than the birding, but it was warblers and worts. And I became fascinated with birding and have started birding regularly. It was led by Derek Lovich, who owns Freeport Wild Bird Supply. And in the course of years, I've regularly attended his bird walks. And even one winter, I attended a 2-day gull identification course. The first day we spent in the classroom, and the second day we spent in the field, in particularly the Portland waterfront. We were on Maine State Pier identifying gulls, and Derek turned to the Casco Bay Ferry Terminal and commented on the fact that it was a death trap for birds. And of course, that was my building. I was a project architect for that, so I really took it to heart. And it sort of stimulated a conversation through the years about how to make buildings more bird safe. In the course of the last year or so, Derek and his wife Jeanette purchased property, and I was really honored by the fact that he turned to me and said, I'd like to build a home. So Matt and I started the process with him and visited his site, and I'll turn it over to Matt to sort of present what we've presented, what we've come up with.
Sure. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes,
cool.
we can.
Okay, good. So yeah, this is their property. It's north of Portland along the Androscoggin River. And they own this whole tract of land here. It actually stretches beyond the screen, but it's a very narrow site here. And part of their plan for the site is to kind of rewild the whole thing with native species and create walking trails and ski trails throughout the whole site, so they can do year-round birding because this is a migratory path. And existing on the site is or was a dilapidated farmhouse they just tore down this spring. And you can see all this gray or brown material is a large stand of knotweed that they're currently trying to eradicate, so they can put in some plantings that will actually attract native wildlife, because that I guess nothing really lives in that sort of material. And one thing I learned just in like the demo process, Derek brought up that, you know, this barn was pretty much collapsed, but he wanted to have it demoed before birds started nesting, because that was like a major, that would be a major loss for habitat if they had moved in there. So we did it before they came. So this is one of the early site plans. We're restricted to build on most of the footprint of the existing building, just because we're so close to the floodplain, or we're in the floodplain of the river. But we're trying to orient the house mostly south, so they can use solar panels And then Derek, the owner, came up with this plan to build a pond that they could bury all the knotweed and then create habitat for birds that maybe are coming off the river. And this is the site plan now. So they have designated a bird feeding area. So from their living room, they'll be able to look out and see all sorts of birds come and go. And this was really a unique project because from the get-go, they were like, we want bird-safe glass throughout the whole building. And that's a non-negotiable, and it cannot be removed. So if another family buys this home, the glass is permanent. It's not a decal or anything on the surface. And they didn't mind seeing it too. So the plan, well, I'll just run through the floor plan a little bit. So it's a pretty simple home, about 2,000 square feet. You got your main living area here and then a large living dining area that's kind of like the showpiece. And then a screened in porch. So we didn't have to worry about bird safe glazing on these windows that are within the porch. And this is kind of where it's at now. They're just starting construction. But, you know, working with the window manufacturers, trying to find products that would suit us, became clear that the window package, because it's such a medium-sized home, it's going to be large portion of the budget. So they were conscious of using the clear bird safe glazing only in very limited areas. And then throughout the home, they were okay with having the acid etched pattern because it is kind of like a statement piece for the house. It's like one of the design features. So this is a view kind of when you approach it, these angled columns around to the screened in porch. And then around the side, you can see this is the living area. We have these very tall windows, corner windows on either side of this big living room. And then a little outdoor bird watching area. The bird feeding zone will be kind of just to the right. And then this is an interior elevation of that main living area. Just to show, we designated really, I think it's only like 5 or 6 windows that will be the fully clear bird safe glazing. And then anywhere that's either above the major sight line, like these high windows in the living room, or in the secondary areas like the kitchen or bathrooms, those will all have the frit pattern. And we're working with Marvin as well. Most of the windows will be this Walker glass with the acid etched frit. And I think it's a threat factor of 23. We tried to just do the lowest threat factor in that case. And then we're working on the clear bird safe glazing. Walker has this, this pattern, which they don't have the ABC rating, which is something I learned. But it is definitely, it's tested by experts in the field. So I'm working now to find like all the data on this bird safe glazing. And I think it's about a threat factor of 31. But we're also looking at Ornolux, which that glass is rated by the ABC. Yeah, Austin, do you have any other points to add?
No, again, it was sort of unusual in that Derek and Jeanette were so committed to bird safe glazing. It was far more affordable to come up with vinyl applications that would have worked and would have made this bird safe. But they wanted to, as Matt said, design a home that could not be reversed, that any future owners of this home could not undo what they've done, which is a significant commitment, but we certainly appreciate and honor that.
Yeah, similarly to Danielle's project, like the idea of attracting birds to the site and then creating like a trap for them, it's very key, especially since it will be bird habitat, that it is all bird safe, especially these windows in the living room.
Yeah, the clients viewed that as their stadium for bird watching. So they could, chairs and the furnished plan would be so they could sit and just look at those feeding stations that Matt pointed out. They also sponsor a hawk watch at Bradbury Mountain each year, and there is one bedroom that accommodates the person for that duty. So, it's they're a pleasure to work with. And I did want to point out we've been working with Sonia Barantis of Ripcord Engineering, and a lot of they're committed to non-fossil fuels and a lot of innovative technologies, high performance envelope. So it was a great opportunity to incorporate and marry these two different objectives into one home.
This is great. Thank you both. Really, Danielle, Austin, and Matt, just to start the conversation. It's really fabulous to see how vulnerable you were, but how dedicated. So with that, I think I would love to open this up to questions. It's interesting too, one aspect, you have all touched a bit on the landscape. What I'm hoping to ping is to get landscape architects more involved in the conversation. So you can talk about the glass or brise soleils or some kind of structure, but what does it mean with the planting palette, especially encouraging native plantings back into the landscape and thinking about habitat and food sources. What does that mean? So I've talked a bit with Soren about this, and I'm hoping that we can do an in-person event with landscape architects and a walk during migration. So with that, I would love to open this up to questions. All of you are on an ask to unmute. So I can just go through the whole list and allow you to all speak and unmute you because the presentations are over. Or if you don't feel comfortable, you can type something in and if I missed you and I didn't unmute you or ask to unmute you, then please let me know.
And I'm happy to jump in on Barbara's question to get things
Great. Oh, brilliant.
rolling.
To get it started.
Cool.
Thank you.
So long story short is yes, Barbara, there are UV applications that can be put on the outside of a window. As you can imagine, the vast majority of windows or projects or people who are looking for bird safe windows are not at the stage of construction or even further along, like Danielle's project. They are houses that are already in place where they have a problem or have seen birds or etc. And so the best place to develop lasting solutions for windows is at the design stage. And it's no surprise, and I'm so pleased that Derek and Jeanette, who are two of the best birders in the state and really who walk the walk, are out there walking the walk, and that's really exciting. But the vast majority of people already have a home or whatever, and so there are lots of products that can be applied to the outside of windows to reduce bird collisions. The goal is to reduce the reflection and or let a bird know that there's a solid thing here, not an invisible thing or a reflected sky. And so there are lots of ways to do that. Birds see light in the ultraviolet spectrum. Most birds do, while we don't. And so as Danielle showed in her slide there, when a bird looks at a window that has ultraviolet either strips on the outside or embedded inside, which is some of the products they were talking about, they see it as a solid structure where we see it as a clear window. So those type of products are sort of seen as the gold standard in terms of folks who are building a house who don't want to have any visual impacts. But there are lots of other strategies. There are ultraviolet strips that can be placed on the outside, and there are strips of other materials, vinyl stickers that can be placed on the outside of windows. Those sound like they are marring to the view. They're really not. And I would invite folks here to our Gilsland Farm Sanctuary in Falmouth, where we're working on installing, we have a lot of windows. We want to make our Audubon Center a a showcase for the different products. So architects or people can come and take a look at what these things look like when they're applied. And I'll tell you, from the windows we've done so far, when you're looking on the inside out, you really don't notice it at all. But from the outside, it does appear, like something that a bird won't fly into. So there are stickers and frits and things they place on the outside. Screens, like Danielle and Matthew mentioned, are another ones. Screens, either bug screens or more sort of decorative architectural screens, work very well. And so does acid etched glass, which Matthew talked about. That's where the manufacturer will draw a pattern with acid in the glass. Still has properties of allowing light to come in and seeing out in many cases, but also gives the impression for a bird that there's something solid there. So there are a lot of solutions, and there are more coming all the time, which I think is great as we're at this stage of the project. And if you're interested in more, you could come to our Audubon Center Nature Store, or not to Derek Lovich's store in Freeport. He has a lot of products, and you can see them up there. So hope that helps.
And Nick does bring
Thanks,
up a
Nick.
point. We're working with Maine Audubon to find suppliers to retrofit, to really look at Gilsland Farm as a demo site for both residential and commercial. So it's exciting that the huge glass panels at the farm definitely are getting the decals and the tape, but there are smaller panels that you can see in situ what it looks like. And it's actually exciting for PSA to promote that. The only public project right now that's complete is at University of New England's Biddeford campus. Their student commons has bird safe glass that was initiated by a student call. This was done in pretty spectacular habitat. So the student body demanded that this be done, and their environmental science department fueled that. So, and I don't know actually, Dr. Marr, if USM is in talks with the students about this on their projects. I don't know if you're available.
It's got to click all the right buttons.
Yeah,
I don't have firsthand knowledge. I had heard from, and I don't know, from someone, maybe one of those early morning bird walks, but maybe somebody else that, yeah, it was Austin. So that they had committed to some bird safe technology. So Austin, I'll let you speak to that.
Well, I had raised the issue with Glenn Cummings, and he did mention, and in part because of the students' commitment and the research that Nick has done, he was very aware of the bird strike and said that he would be committed to bird safe glazing for the new construction. So interpreted that as a good sign.
Yeah, because I know they are working really hard to make it, a sustainable project. So especially with the passive house and things like that. So I would think you would be on board with that. And I will give a shout out to Nick that those demo projects are really nice. I was checking them out the other day and seeing which ones I like the best. So it is nice to have them all in one place so you can compare.
Yeah, I mean, we've got more to come when we can get what I can get out there, and it's not, and the stickers don't melt off in this heat.
well, great. Are there other questions? Any? Yes, no.
So I'll follow up on Nick's comment. I did want to sort of say that not all the solutions have to be with glazing. There could be creative screens. And, the 2 case studies we saw today were both residential. And of course, in Portland, we have more and more curtain wall. And, we also have curtain wall that's facing south facing, which from a solar perspective is just atrocious. So I would be encouraged that you could accommodate a bird safe situation and also make it more environmentally responsive and a better solar situation as well.
I think that's a great point. And Austin, you've been going on the walks. You do, Nick and Dr. Marr, you've been doing these walks for now just a year. So you have 2 seasons under your belt, and you'll start up again in October?
September.
Yep.
Yeah, and so these walks we wanted to get a sense of how big of a problem this was in Portland. And so we have teams who walk a specific route or multiple routes through the city spring and fall to find birds on the sidewalk. That's where the picture that Danielle showed, that was a female scarlet tanager on the ground. And we found plenty, we find lots. And so getting a sense of which buildings birds are striking against, what species we're talking about, questions like that is the goal of the project. What we found so far really lines up with what the study suggests. Buildings with large areas of glass are the deadliest. Species which are sort of generally weaker flyers, like sparrows, common yellowthroat warblers, and things like that are the typical victims, although we have found everything from tanagers to woodpeckers to, around the country, woodcock, and various other species. So it's been really interesting to get a sense of that so far, and I look forward to working with Chris again in the fall. If anyone wants to join, the fall starts later in the day than the spring. So,
I did want to point out, Nick, too, that those bird walks do occur early in the day. But the reason for that is that bird strikes occur and then predation occurs, that gulls swoop in, and the question is all, if we have so many bird strikes, why do we not see dead birds littering the sidewalk? And in Portland, they're quickly consumed by seagulls or other predators, correct?
Absolutely. We several times had to race gulls to get to a bird on the sidewalk because if it's an easy meal for them, and that includes live stunned birds and dead birds. Yeah, that was a real eye-opening piece of our walks, especially in the fall, is that the gulls knew exactly what was happening, and we had very little time to sort of get to the birds before they were gone.
And then you start to notice that they're just sitting perched on some of these buildings that happen to have a lot of glass, and you kind of wonder if they've already figured it out and are just kind of waiting for the strikes to happen. So it's almost like we need to stake out some students and just sit and watch certain buildings to see if we can beat out the gulls.
Well, fascinating. I'm really grateful, and I'm really looking forward to meeting in person, because again, I think doing the walk and talks, I mean, as you guys did the walks, but doing walk and talks, and also just the way both of you presented the projects, and really those design challenges of, especially in midstream, sort of revisiting, I think is exceptionally beneficial. So I look forward to that. Thank you all very, very much. I'm glad this is recorded in perpetuity, and I will send everyone links. And really, like I said, this is just the beginning. I clearly am not an expert at all, and am excited to bring in the variety of voices. So Danielle, Austin, and Matt, thank you for contributing to this. So yeah, this was great. Anything else? Give everybody a few seconds to say something, and then thank you. All right, great. I'm going to stop recording.